How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the channel. Daimyo and Shogunate are some fun mechanics in EU4 which makes playing in Japan a different experience. It's a microcosm in itself where you don't care what's happening in the world for the first few decades at least until you form Japan. In this guide we will see how to get Shogunate and form Japan early game when starting as a Daimyo, and we will be playing as Oda for this run. Oda starts as a one province minor, this tiny nation here, but it packs a big punch. Their national ideas are among the best in game. The starting bonus for army morale and infantry compatibility are great for initial conquest, and the rest of ideas play very well for a longer game. For this guide, we will just concentrate on forming Japan, while I butcher all the names again. So let's get right into it. This will be a short guide. How you form Japan starting as Oda is by constant warfare. No, really, just chain war one daimyo after another and you will get there. It's actually super easy. I will go over the opening moves and some general tips and then finish up with a time lapse. For starts, set your national focus on military, then find two alliances. One in the north, Uesugi is a good ally and they will almost always ally you at the start, and another ally in the south. You can choose between Yaman and Hosokawa. Even if your potential allies are rivals, you should still be able to ally them. Royal marry first, then send alliance offer on the same day. They aren't going to be your long-term allies, so it doesn't matter if one of them breaks their alliance in a few years. Now start improving relations with Ashikaga and royal marry them. Try to keep their opinion of you high enough in early years, because if Shogunate attacks you before you are ready, it will be GG for you. So we'll keep them on our side for now, then declare and take Shogunate later. Move your merchants to trade node and set them to improve relations. It's not much, but it helps. Then train one cavalry, complete the force limit mission and get ready for war. The wars will be surprisingly easy. The starting military bonuses for Oda are really strong, and if you get a half decent general, you can stack wipe armies of your size. So let's go over some general strategies for conquering other daimyos. It's important to have a siege general. I had a 2 siege general at the start and later a 3 siege general, which really helped a lot. The reason this is important is that the first couple of wars are all about sieges, sort of like a base trade scenario. Whoever sieges the capital first wins. You should also convert your rulers to generals. They can be very helpful. Sieges are an important part of initial battles, and there are 3 level 3 forts at the start near you. So obviously you shouldn't attack them, as you don't have the force limit to siege down the higher level forts yet. In few years, some of these level 3 forts might change hands and then they become level 2 forts, as it's not a capital anymore, which is a good time to take them for you. Or you can just call in your ally to help with sieges. Similarly, don't go to war with daimyos who have significantly bigger force limit with you, unless you have a god tier general. You could consider going over force limit if you are in a hurry, but really, you can play this easy and unite Japan early enough. As Oda, the first target is Kitabatake. Kitabatake? This early, they only have one minor ally, so the war is easy. There are actually so many small nations with limited force limit at the start that even a couple of enemy allies won't make a huge difference, as you can wipe out your neighbor stack first when you declare war and then take care of rest of the enemies. The CB we will use is Sengoku, which is a CB we get for all neighboring daimyos. It's super convenient and the reason you can chain war, as you don't have to wait for claims. You will also see a lot of fighting going on almost all the time. The daimyos don't really like each other, and that makes wars even easier as the nations are already weakened or their ally might not join the war. After the first war, it's just going to be a sequence of war against neighboring daimyos. Pick whoever has the weakest ally and declare using the Sengoku CB. Declaring war one after another like this will cause the shogunate to seppuku a lot of your rulers. I lost 4 rulers to seppuku in the first few years. It's pretty bad, as you also lose stability when the ruler dies, but you can't do much about it. One thing you should keep in mind, the shogunate will use seppuku right after you declare, so make sure your ruler general is not in charge of a siege or a battle, as that will mean -2 stability hit instead of the usual -1. You can also call your allies in war if needed, though you won't really need them after the first 10 years or so. They're just there for moral support. You can basically chain war after this. The only reason you might want to stop is if you're close to grabbing a military tech, then you tech up and stack wipe the enemy armies again. For the first few years though, just make sure ASHIKAGA is happy with you. Other daimyos won't be as happy though, and a coalition will form against you. One of the things you can do to delay this is taking your time piecing out in war. That doesn't mean you don't chain war. I frequently had 2 or 3 wars ongoing at the same time, and I only pieced out when the call for peace came in. Since you can usually conquer provinces really quickly, this strategy will give your aggressive expansion a chance to cool down a little bit. And after a while, you will be big enough that it doesn't matter who joins the coalition. But by that time, you will be limited by admin points for coring, so you will have to pace it out anyways. And talking of coalitions, you will see some funky stuff here. The coalition mechanics are put to test in the small region when everyone is fighting everyone. And sometimes, despite there being a coalition of multiple daimyos, you will see that when you attack one of them, some of the others at coalition won't join in the war. I had a coalition of 4 nations, but when I declared on one of them, only 1 other nation joined in. And although here it seems like they're just allies getting called into war, I could not separate piece them because they actually joined as coalition partners. So even if you see coalition of few nations, check the declare war screen to see who would actually join in. As you start expanding, keep in mind that the shogunate gets an annexed daimyo CB on you once you have 10 provinces or more. That's another reason why having multiple wars at the same time is good, as those nations won't join the war against you in case shogunate decides to declare against you, so you already excluded those nations from war, and you have at least 1 ally, which should be enough to deter the shogunate to not declare at all. A quick note on navy: once you have some money, start building galleys to force limit. You can sell or delete your transports too. You will need that naval superiority to take on the eastern islands. Also, it helps with sieges on coastal forts. And similarly with navy, just keep building up to force limit as you get more force limit from new provinces. You might also have some rebel issues at some point. Just raise autonomy when you can. You should also promote culture. So Japan only has 3 cultures, and it's well worth spending 100 diplo points to remove that non-accepted culture malice. Once you have expanded enough, you need to decide on how you want to conquer Japan. There are 2 ways to form Japan as daimyo. One is, if you are a shogunate, you have at least 25 provinces, you own Kyoto and Musashi, and you have at least 1 daimyo under you, you can form Japan. But when you form Japan, all your daimyos are released as independent nations. So I would say don't take this decision too early, as you will have to conquer each one of your former daimyos now. Unless you just want to get the Chrysanthemum throne achievement, then go for it. Second way to form Japan is if you are the shogunate and you own Kyoto and Musashi, and there are no other daimyos left, independent or otherwise. Taking this decision means you already have all of Japan under your control, so it's just a matter of choice. Do you want to play as a shogun or Japan? And if you want to keep the daimyo mechanics or not. This option also gives you 100 monarch points of each category and 100 legitimacy for some reason. I prefer to conquer the daimyos myself rather than wait to diplo annex them. There's also a third way to form Japan if you're not a daimyo or shogunate, but we won't get into that in this video. So now we know to form Japan you need to be a shogunate. And to become a shogunate we need to declare the war for emperor on the current shogunate Ashikaga, which will cost us -3 stability and +4 war exhaustion. You can't really do much about that, unless the shogunate attacks you first, which is hard to orchestrate. So just save 400 admin points and couple of 100 diplo points before you declare. The question is, when would you declare this war? And you have a few options. One is you can declare the war for emperor as soon as you feel you can take them on. This can be done fairly early, as taking over Tokyo is not that hard. This means you will have all other daimyos under you now, and then you can play the diplomacy game and slowly diplo annex them, or you get the annexed daimyo CB for bigger daimyos and conquer them that way. Second option is you can conquer most of the daimyos, then declare on shogunate and take Kyoto. Now you will only have couple of daimyos under you, which would mean easier diplo annexing later. And I actually prefer this way. The third option is you can conquer all the daimyos and take the shogunate last. The downside to this strategy is that you need to spend a lot of admin points to core, but on the flip side you can paint your color on Japan really early. And you can choose any of those options, it's really up to you how you want to play it. And that is how you unite Japan as a daimyo. After forming Japan, you can either keep Oda national ideas or take the Japan ideas. I would keep the Oda ideas though, they are really good. And if you want to form Japan even earlier, just pick one of the bigger daimyos to start with, such as Uesugi or Hosokawa. And once you form Japan, you can either go imperialist Japan and conquer Korea and Ming eventually, or go colonial and focus on Indonesia and the New World, or do both. Japan is a pretty strong country. And we might do another longer Japan guide at some point. This video was more about forming Japan, as it has been requested a few times on this channel. This guide also isn't as detailed as some of my other guides, but that's because it's just declaring on one daimyo after other and only piecing out on call for peace. And you will have all of Japan in no time. I hope the general pointers in this guide help a little bit to all the people who requested a Japan guide. You were watching a Radio Res guide. Thanks for your time, and I'll see you all in the next one.